Right now, someone is slowly losing respect to you and you don't even realize it. But it doesn't look like disrespect. It looks normal, friendly, comfortable, even familiar. And that's exactly why you miss it, because the signals are not loud. They are subtle. A delay before replying, a shorter response than before, a lack of curiosity in your words, and you think it's nothing. But your presence is being recalibrated, and this is where most people fail. They respond normally. They over-explain. They chase approval without noticing it. But you start to do something different. You pull back just slightly. You speak with intention. You stop filling every silence, and people feel it immediately. They don't know what changed, but they adjust to you anyway. That is the hidden shift. And once it begins, it spreads. Conversations change. Energy changes. Respect changes. Not because you demanded it, but because you stop needing it. And that's when everything flips. You are no longer being tested. You are setting the standard. And they can feel it without you saying a word. But it gets worse for you now. Because the moment people stop respecting you, they don't announce it. They adjust to you in silence, and you mistake it for normal connection. Now here's what you don't realize. Your habits are teaching people how much they should value you. Fast replies make you feel attentive, but they signal availability without boundaries. Over-explaining makes you feel understood, but it actually lowers your authority. Always saying yes feels kind, but it quietly tells people your time is cheap. And this is where most people fail without ever noticing it. You reply instantly to a message, thinking you're being respectful. But on the other side, you're being categorized as always available. You explain yourself to avoid misunderstanding, but you create more doubt instead. People don't tell you this directly. They just feel your value shifting downward in small, invisible steps. Here's the truth you were never taught. Respect is not lost in one moment. It is eroded through repeated patterns of overgiving and underasserting. The more accessible you are, the less intentional you become in their eyes. And once that perception forms, it silently governs every interaction after. But there is something even deeper happening that you cannot yet see, because people don't just respond to what you do. They respond to the version of you they believe you are. And right now, that version is being shaped without your awareness. Every instant reply reinforces it. Every unneeded explanation strengthens it. Every yes you give when you meant no builds it further. And you are unknowingly writing your own social positioning in real time. But now you are starting to see it. And once you see it, you cannot behave the same again. Because the moment you change how you respond, everything around you recalibrates, and people who once overlooked you begin to question why you are no longer easy to ignore without you saying anything at all. And now you start to see the pattern, because nothing around you is random anymore. But it gets worse for you here. Most people think respect is something people give freely. But you're starting to realize it's calculated in real time. Every interaction is a quiet evaluation, not spoken, not obvious, but always happening underneath. Now here's what you don't realize. People are constantly measuring your boundaries. How fast do you respond? How easily do you agree? How often do you correct yourself to avoid discomfort? And you never even notice the moment they start doing it. You think it's a normal conversation, but for them it's a data point, another signal of who you are. And this is where most people fail. They believe respect is emotional, based on liking, based on connection. But in reality, it's psychological scoring. You don't lose respect in one action. You lose it through repeated silent approvals of how others treat you. And the hidden enemy becomes clear now. It was never one person disrespecting you. It was the constant unconscious testing from everyone around you. They test your reaction when you're ignored. They test your patience when you're interrupted. They test your confidence when you hesitate. And you respond every time without realizing you're being measured. But now something shifts inside you. You stop seeing conversations as casual and start seeing them as evaluations, not to become paranoid, but to become aware. Because once you understand the system, you stop participating in it blindly. You begin to notice the exact moments where your value is being updated in someone's mind. And more importantly, where you are the one updating it. And that changes everything. Because now you're no longer guessing your position. You're watching it being formed in real time. And what you do next will decide whether you stay invisible or become impossible to ignore. And now you reach the turning point. Because once you see how you're being measured, you can no longer stay the same. But But it gets worse for the version of you they're used to. That version was always available, always reachable, always predictable. And that predictability is exactly why you started losing weight in their mind. Now here's what you don't realize. Power doesn't come from saying more. It comes from becoming harder to access. Most people stay visible all the time. They respond instantly. They stay emotionally open. They fill every gap just to avoid silence. But you are starting to do something different. You begin to pause before replying, not out of games, but out of awareness. And this is where most people fail. They confuse presence with value. But constant presence removes tension. And without tension, there is no curiosity. Think about a real moment. You always reply instantly to messages. You always being available for every request. You always being there before anyone even misses you. At first, it feels like connection. But slowly, people stop adjusting toward you because there is nothing to wait for anymore. Now imagine the shift. You don't disappear completely. You just stop being automatic. Your responses come with space. Your attention comes with selectivity. And suddenly, people start noticing gaps. They start questioning your availability. They start recalibrating how they see you. That is controlled absence, not distance out of ego, but distance with intention. Because value increases in the space where you are not constantly available to be consumed. And here's the power line. When you control access to you, you control perception of you. And now something begins to change. People who took you for granted start paying attention again, not because you chased them, but because you stopped being predictable. And what happens next will show you how quickly perception shifts the moment you become selective with your presence. And now you feel the shift starting to build inside you. Because once you control your presence, you start noticing your words more. But it gets worse for the old version of you. That version used to explain everything. Every decision, every choice, every feeling, as if clarity needed permission. Now here's what you don't realize. The more you explain yourself, the less authority you project, because explanation sounds like negotiation, and negotiation signals uncertainty, and this is where most people fail. They think being understood comes from talking more, so they add details, they justify, they defend, until their message loses all strength. Think about a simple moment. Someone questions your decision. You immediately rush to clarify. You add reasons they never asked for. You try to close every gap in their understanding. But in doing that, you open a deeper gap in how they perceive you. Because confidence doesn't argue. It doesn't overextend. It doesn't chase agreement. Now imagine a different version of you. Someone asks something. You respond once, clearly, calmly, no extra layers, no emotional filler. And then you stop. Silence follows. And in that silence, people start interpreting you differently. They begin to fill in the gaps themselves. And surprisingly, they assume more respect than you could ever explain into them. That's the power of brevity. That's the power of certainty. That's the power of not needing to be understood immediately. Because understanding follows conviction, not explanation. And here's the power line. When you stop trying to convince people, you start becoming undeniable to them, and something begins to change around you. People listen more carefully. They interrupt you less. They accept your words with less resistance. Not because you said more, but because you finally stopped overreaching. And what comes next will show you how silence becomes your strongest form of authority when you use it with intention instead of hesitation. But this is the moment everything shifts for you, not loudly, not with explanation, but in the way people suddenly start treating you differently. They don't say it, but they feel it. Something about you no longer fits the version they had in their mind. And this is where most people fail. They try to explain the change. They try to convince others they've grown, but you don't. You simply move differently, speak less, observe more. Your energy stops chasing approval. In a real moment, imagine walking into a room where you used to be ignored. Now conversations pause for a second. Eyes track you without effort, not because you demanded attention, but because your presence became undeniable. Here's what you don't realize yet. Respect doesn't return when you ask for it. It returns when you become someone who doesn't need it. And the shift is quiet, almost invisible, but permanent. Because from this point on, you are no longer the one being tested. You are the one setting the standard. And once they see that, they can't unsee it. Because the moment you stop needing validation, everything around you recalibrates. People who once overlooked you start questioning their judgment. And you don't chase any of it, you simply continue forward unchanged.